No, I didn't hear anyone. All right, testing, 1, 2, 3.
All right, we'll see if you guys can hear me now.
Raise your hand if you can hear us.
Can you hear me now?
We're good.
All right.
Excellent. Awesome. Yay! Sorry for the delay and take 2. Scott got to rehearse his intro. All right, so welcome to the second session of our summer learning series. And we really appreciate you taking the time out of your morning or your afternoon to spend with us to learn about secrets in the inbox, tips to manage and organize your email. We have Scott Hertz here today to help us, get some, coping mechanisms to deal with our email and, being able to find it again and answer efficiently. Thanks to Scott.
Awesome. All right, so we'll dive in. Here, and what I was saying that you guys couldn't hear me say is that I really want this to be a conversation. So stop us along the way if you have questions, ideas. Really want to have a great dialogue about how to manage your email. So a little humor to get us started. 10 years ago, it was that really annoying seeing You've Got Mail, which if you Google, it's one of the most exciting sounds of the last decade or decades or something like that. Now it's 436 unread emails, and we are excited when we get snail mail, which for somebody who does know, so I imagine that this is what all of you guys look like, or how you feel about your email, and I am here to throw you a life preserver and save you. And I will say that I have now had this exercise with a couple of different people to play it out and give them what I think is my strategy. But know that there are a million different strategies out there, and you'll find the right one that works for you. Mine might not be the best, but I think it is. So basically, let's start over. Kind of put aside whatever you do right now. If you're feeling overwhelmed, whatever you're doing right now, clearly it's not working because that's why you're feeling overwhelmed. So we're going to throw out some strategies to get you on the right path. The first method to my madness is every email has an action. Never open an email and just open the email and read it and do nothing. Every email, once you read it, there's an action for that email. So what are those actions? Action 1 is respond to that email if it's going to take less than 2 minutes to respond, and then move it to a folder and delete it. Another action, move that email directly to a folder. If you don't know what folders are, we'll talk about that in a minute. Delete. I heard Victor say delete it, and send to the trash. It only stays in your inbox if it will take more than 2 minutes to respond or some sort of follow-up is necessary. Just one example that I often find when I go through people's inboxes and give them advice is I see here at 633, one example is that Russell sends out to us every week the schedule of meetings that happen at 633, and I go through people's inbox, and there are weeks worth of schedules from Russell, and I'm like, but why is it there? I get the email from Russell every week. I open the email, I look at it, I see if there's anything that I need to know about. I look to see if there's any meeting that I had scheduled that's not on there, and then I delete the email. Never does that email just sit in my inbox. So read the email and respond, move, delete. Only keep it in your inbox if it will take more than 2 minutes to reply. And one of the things we'll talk about later, a lot of people have different methodologies for how to respond and reply to emails. Two people in particular in the URJ that get a lot of emails that I interact with, Rabbi Jonah Pesner and Paul Reichenbach, often write me responses back that have only a few words in them. But those are also 2 people that I find I'm emailing back and forth with really quickly, and they're responding to those emails, and that's okay. If that's clearly their strategy for getting through those emails and making sure that the message gets to the right place. have an and again, if anybody has questions on the webinar, send them in and we'll answer them. And if you have questions, let me know. Have an organization system. Use folders to keep your emails organized. A lot of people have different ways of doing this: by person, by project, by department or division, by action. In a lot of ways, it's a combination of all of them. I have 13 years worth of emails organized in my Outlook mailbox, and they're organized in a number of different ways. I have folders for I work with multiple divisions, so I have folders for each division. Then I have folders in there depending on the division, by year, by program, by event. I have Nifty Convention, biennial. I have folders for each of those events, and then many folders in between that. If you're the kind of person that just wants to put it in a folder and then you're going to search within that folder to find the emails that you want, that's a strategy too. I find that I need a more granular organization of folders to keep up with the different things that I have. And this is just an example of one example that I found online of a way that somebody organizes their emails. You can always search. Folders are not necessarily a system for finding emails. They're a system for organizing emails. The search is the way that you're going to find something based on a particular topic or a particular thing. But if you have all of those emails in your inbox and then you're searching within your inbox to find the email, there's no wonder you can't keep up with what's coming in versus what's already there. And you should fear the unread number. Fear that unread number. That's like, if that number is starting to creep up, that means that you're not doing that you're a failure. So we're going to pause along the way for your turn to give us a little feedback about whether or not you know how to create folders, if you use them in some ways in which you organize things, to help us also know where we can provide additional training beyond this webinar. So I'm curious if people know how to create folders and if they use them or don't use them, or other ways to organize things. Don't know how to, hearing in the room, don't know how to create them. And I wonder if that's a chief issue, is that people just don't know how to create folders. Great, I'm going to keep going, but if anybody on the webinar, Stephanie's running out to see if anybody on the webinar has questions, I will definitely answer them.
I can show you. One of us can bring one.
Yes, and something my friend Max Laban at Green Lake always says to me, let's ask Google. If you don't know, in all reality, because that's what I did for this webinar, if you don't know how to create Outlook folders, just Google create Outlook folders Office 365, and Google will tell you how to do it. Yeah, just repeat. So go to Google and just type in create folders Outlook 365, and there are a million different tutorials that are out there. Or you can just go to YouTube and search right there, and you'll find a video on it.
Hi, Scott. Scott, this is Rachel. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. So I'm monitoring questions online, and I'll just represent anyone who's chatting in the chat box with their questions. Kathy Rowland was wondering, how do you determine which emails you file in Outlook folders as opposed to on the hard drive, like your G or H drive?
So that's a great question. I don't save any. I know there are some people do this. I don't actually save any of my emails outside of Outlook. I tend to, if there are files, I'll save a file to the network, but usually I just keep everything. The only exception to that are emails that I want to save as a template for my work in communications, and I want us to have the template of that particular email. Questions in the room? Yeah.
Scott, are you keeping unanswered emails in files, or once you've dealt with it, you move it? I'm afraid if I don't deal with it, and I want to temporarily put it into a folder, I'm going to
So the question is, if you put unread emails in a folder, what do you do with those? Then how do you get to those emails and deal with those emails? So a couple of things. use Outlook to remind you that if you do that, I don't do that. I read every email in my inbox and then I move it to a folder. If you're going to move emails to folders, and in a moment we're going to talk about how to automate moving emails to folders. If you do that, put an Outlook reminder that reminds you to check that once a day, once every other day. One great oh, no, I'm not going to give my example yet. I'll give that example in the next thing. But use Outlook, use your calendar, create recurring appointments with yourself in Outlook to check those other folders.
I don't want to interrupt your flow, but in terms of if we do use folders, and then for those of us who still need to manage those folders, either unreads or others, maybe you could talk about, now that we've messed up, how do we fix it for all those things that are
Yeah,
up?
I would say that, so the question is, let me make sure I have it correctly, is if you've been using folders but everything's kind of not as organized as you want it to be, how do you start from scratch? A couple of things. That happened to me a few years ago, and I started a new organization system, and then I went back and cleaned the other emails later. And it's a great exercise to do that, and then figure out how many emails you actually reference from that other set of folders, and whether or not you actually need to go through that exercise or just start from scratch. So just make a new folder and start to create your new folders, and then over time move the emails into there. Keep going. Definitely ask questions along the way. So next tip, I think there are 5, so this is number 3, I think. Let your inbox work for you. And you see we've got the gears that are working here. So rules are this really amazing thing that Outlook has. Actually, I think Gmail, these different products have it, that allow you to automate different processes with your email. So you can create a rule that will automatically take an email that's sent to you by X person or from Y organization and move it to a folder. You can automatically get an email that's forwarded from Y organization to your personal email address and then delete it. You can move an email. This is a great thing, and I know a lot of people use this. You can move any email that you're not in the to field that you're carbon copied on into a specific folder, and then make a note to yourself that you're going to check that email once or twice a day. That rule is based on the assumption that if I'm in the CC, I'm not in the to field, then I don't need to read that email right away. Another thing, while staying on that for a minute, never send an email and put 12 people in the to field, because all that does is add to the chaos. Nobody knows who to respond. Send the email to one person, and I think there are a lot of philosophies out there about when to switch to a meeting versus an email chain. If you're in a position to email 12 people and start an email chain, it probably means that conversation needs to be taken offline and happen either in person, on Yammer, or somewhere else where the group can be a part of the conversation. But rules are really great. They can either happen automatically, or you can run a rule on your own. So if you want to use rules to clean up your mailbox, you can do this in reverse. You can go now and say, move every email that's in my inbox from X person to a folder automatically. Rules can do also other things. Rules can send you text messages. Rules can alert you on your computer. Rules can reply. You can have, it can do all kinds of things. It can literally reply to that email and then delete it, all automatically for you. So rules are really great. This is an older version of Outlook, but this is just an example of kind of the way it works. That you can you kind of go on very individual level of when it's from this person, or the subject has this, or it's sent to me only, and then you take those actions. So it's your turn. Question is, do people know how to create rules? Use them? Don't use them? Any examples of rules that you have created?
I created a rule for this calendar.
For calendar.
Russell sends that every
Oh,
week.
so Elizabeth is sharing that when Russell sends the calendar every week, it automatically goes to a folder, and then Elizabeth can go back to that folder when she wants to know what's on the schedule. Great example.
Of course. Calendar. and what do you say, message you, text you?
Me-
What have you used that for?
I've never used it. I would need to explore that a little bit. I just know that it can. I know that it can. It can do it. I know that there are what you can. One workaround that I know of that's actually really easy is everybody's cell phone has an email address associated with your text message. You can create a rule. An easy way to do it is create a rule that, and if an email comes from a specific person or a specific subject or a specific whatever, that it can forward that to you as a text message.
Hi, Scott.
Yeah.
This is Rachel Brill again. So we had a couple suggestions and then also a question on the line. So first I'll get to the question, and then maybe, Alex, I'll unmute you if you don't mind, so you can talk about the way that your friend uses rules. But David Fine was wondering if there's a way for you to show us on your screen where you find rules. Is it under File? Where do you actually physically find it?
Yes. Yeah, it's going to... Yeah, let me... All right. Yeah. So I just want to preface, I had done really great to keep my inbox at a great place, and then I went to meetings for an hour and a half, so Lord knows how many emails came while I was in meetings. So we will see, right? We will see. Oh boy. Okay. That's how many emails came in since 10. Yeah. Okay. So rules are then either under File. Here we go. Manage rules and alerts. And you create a new rule. And it will have some preset ones.
Scott, we can't see your Outlook screen for some reason. It's not. We only just see the PowerPoint still. You may, if you expand the webinar view, you may have to choose to see your screen and not just the application.
There we go. Can you see it now?
Nope.
Let's see now.
Now we can. Perfect.
All right. All right, so let me go backwards here. All right, so File, Manage Rules and Alerts, New Rule, and then you can create a rule, and this is where you go through. So here I would say a specific people. I can choose that person. Move it to a specified folder. You can go, you can do everything. I mean, this is the example they give is move mail from my manager to the high importance folder. That's one example that they give you here. Here is one. I don't know exactly how the function works, but send an alert to your cell phone, play it down. You get an email from someone, that could be annoying. Flags. This is a great time to mention that flagging an email alerts you when alerts you for follow-up. Anna Herman is the queen of doing this. Anna will flag emails that she sent. So it's in her sent items, but she'll put an alert on it, and it reminds her to follow up with that person if she doesn't get a response. I myself just put a note in my Outlook calendar for myself that says, remember to follow up with X person. So while we're here, I will show you that this is my folder, and then I have these are my sort of folders right now that are very popular, and then these are all the different folders that I have that have subfolders in them. Okay. Yes, Rachel, more questions?
Yeah, so I seem to have lost the question box. Let's see. So Alex had an idea that she said she would share, so I'm just going to unmute her. Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so Scott, you actually, I wasn't going to out her, but now that you did, I'm totally going to do it. Anna Herman has this wonderful rule, in addition to what you just said about flagging, where any email that she flags for follow-up goes to a folder, and I don't know what she called it, but it says flag for follow-up, where it just groups, it doesn't only put a flag on them in her inbox, but it puts them in a folder so that those are her to-do items. And as soon as she unflags something, it immediately removes it from that folder. Now the caveat on that is if you flag too many things, it'll be very overwhelming. So I'm not exactly sure what she does, but I can imagine what someone does is you flag something in which you have to follow up and it is on you to do rather than kind of a pending task. But it would have to be a rule that you set for yourself to flag things so that you don't get too overwhelmed with that list.
Yeah,
but,
that's great.
Are you going to talk more about flags? Because I have a suggestion.
Well, no, go ahead.
You can do flags in different colors, so that if you don't want to have a reminder to yourself, you can have, if you do leave things in your inbox, which I now have to change, but if you tag it a certain color so that you know that that's the one that's going to pop off the page, it will remind you to do it.
Yeah, that's great. A couple other things. Experiment with views in Outlook. When I get overwhelmed, like when I come back from this session, I will resort my mailbox by person. The quickest way for me, and there's lots of ways to do it. Sometimes you can sort by conversation. I actually find I'm not a Gmail user. I find conversation very hard to follow. I tend to sort by, my mailbox is always sorted by day. So it shows the email today, and then it has like yesterday, later, and then like last week. So it sorts that way. But I will go back now and more than likely sort by person to help me get through. The other thing is, when you come back to your mailbox, when you come back after being away for a while, well, first of all, the rules out there when I Googled is that we all shouldn't be checking our email right now while we're on this webinar because we don't pay attention. But I know that we're all checking our email while we're on this webinar, so that's okay. But when you come back, don't start from the bottom. Start from the top, because what actually happens is that everybody starts to reply to the email that everybody's already replied to, and it adds insult to injury. So don't do that. And there are a lot of ways to do views. IT starts from the bottom. Okay. So next rule. This is a huge one and to me it's okay. Obviously, okay. I think if you don't do this, then you don't get to complain about your inbox not being able to be managed. Reroute personal and non-essential emails to somewhere else. So what does that mean? Stop getting personal emails that you don't need to get at work in your work email. It doesn't make sense for so many reasons, including that you shouldn't be getting non-work emails in your work email, and it adds chaos. If you get an email every time you get a Facebook alert, and your kid's school sends this, and your JCPenney this, and your whatever, no wonder you can't get through everything else because you're getting through those things, and it's a distraction, and your brain is doing all these crazy things because it's going back and forth between all of those things. So turn off those notifications and send them to another email address. Create another email address, like a Gmail or Google, to have your newsletters go to that you want to read, or just make a rule. One way to avoid this is to use rules. It's to say that when your email from X organization comes in, you reroute it to there. One example, I actually, like Channel 7 here in New York, I get their alerts to my email because I'm so crazy during the day that I don't go online that I want to know what's going on if there's something going on. So I get those things to my email. But I think this is a huge one, and this is like, there are so many things that you don't have control of, but this is one that you do have. This is one that you do have control of. And it just makes sense. It's the same principle that you don't want your work emails coming to your personal email, for the most part. We already did. I don't think I put any questions on here. So, but the question is if there are If there are any questions about rerouting emails or personal email or that, I'll pause for that. The last and quite frankly the most important thing is my rule of helping others. Like the reality is that so much of what I read online, and I enjoy sending these emails to Elizabeth and Stephanie, is about, it really comes down to all of us as an organization, not the individual. There are so many different things that I read. I mentioned earlier that like when to have a meeting or when to text message, when to Yammer, when to instant message. And I think that every team, it really is a team thing. It's not an organizational thing. It's a team thing. Like my team, we know when to email versus message versus whatever, because it kind of depends on the nature of the work. You don't need, and if you're working throughout the day with one of your staff members or one of your colleagues on a particular project, there's no need to have 25 emails going back and forth with the minutia of that project. You can open Link or Ubu or whatever and just message back and forth during the day on those individual pieces. The other great thing is if you're using Link and you're messaging on Link, Link tells you when the person's not there, if they're in a meeting or whatever, because it's on the calendar. Another thing, when you send an email in Outlook, it tells you when you start to put the email in, it tells you if their out of office is on. Consider if it says that person's out of the office, maybe you should send the email to someone else if you need an answer. So discuss with your team, keep messages and replies short. So much of what I'm reading online is about that we all spend so much time, and this is a catch-22 because we all talk about the tone in email and all that other stuff, but at the same time, everything is about shorter, shorter, shorter. There are a million methodologies out there. One that I Googled and found out is called 5 sentences. That's actually the website, 5.sentences, which says that every email should be 5 sentences or less. There's an EOM method, end of message, where some people will put the email. I had a professor in college that put it in the subject. He would put instead of sending an email that said can you meet me at 4, put in the subject of the message, can you meet me at 4 p.m. EOM, or running late for the meeting EOM, put all of that in the subject. And really this is such a totally interesting thing is, really think about, is email absolutely necessary? Is email the best medium? There's so much out there about getting up, walking, if you're in person, walking across the hall, calling someone, getting on video chat with them, a lot of different things to think about. So this is pretty much the end. I'll run through a couple more slides, but the reality is that I and the jury's still out as to if the email brings organization to my chaos, or my chaos is created by being organized on my email. So the jury's still out on that. But the reality is, you have to work. Not only, there's 2 things. Email is a part of work. We're no longer, and I know that I'm in sort of the sandwich generation of people that didn't grow up with email, but I'm totally comfortable with email and email is the way that we work. We don't send memos anymore and spend days writing them, and things are moving at a light speed pace, and so email is kind of here to stay, and you have to work at having an inbox that's clean. Figure out what works for you. Like I said, there's a lot of things out there. One says don't open your inbox until noon. That everything that you need to do is in the morning, if that's your productive time, and that if there's a serious emergency, they're going to call you or they're going to walk over to you and tell you what that is. Some people, their nature of their job is that you can't do that. Think about what works for you. If it's every night before you go home, blocking out, make a meeting with yourself that at the end of the day you're going to spend 30 minutes cleaning out your inbox. It's the same methodologies of making a to-do list in the morning or making a to-do list at night or whatever. But you really, I think that it's one of those things where you just have to create a plan that works and do it. You can't not have a plan because that's what's creating the chaos, and then you feel overwhelmed, and then it's a never-ending vicious cycle. So there is no easy button, unfortunately, and no easy method. And I share this because I was fascinated. First of all, I heard about this years ago, and then I Googled it, and it's like a real thing. Okay? So there is a philosophy out there that you can declare email bankruptcy. And there are a lot of different methods to doing this. One is that there was a CEO that years ago, he secreted a rule that it sent an email to anyone that he had in his contacts or anybody that was in his inbox, and it said, I'm declaring email bankruptcy, and if you have an email that you want me to see, please resend it to me, and I'll take care of it. One really easy way to declare email bankruptcy here is make a folder, move your entire inbox into it, and spend a week working back from your inbox. You're going to hear from the people that you haven't responded to that are in that email, or you're going to miss a deadline, or you're going to do whatever, and you're going to figure out what happened, and you may realize that you can just start from scratch. I mean, you really can do it. There are also other methodologies out there. There's the zero inbox rule that, like, at the end of every day, your inbox is going to be at zero. I'm the kind of person that the emails that are left in my inbox at the end of every day are emails that I have to do something. I either have to follow up with someone, it's a reminder to me that I have to do something, it is it's a project, a follow-up, I'm waiting on X, no email sitting in my inbox, just to be there. It's not just hanging out. I don't really want it to be there. So I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Scott, we actually had some questions on the line. If we have time for that.
I'm also happy I can show people my mailbox if you want to see mine.
Okay. Well, first I just had a question from Stephanie Fink. She wanted you to talk a little bit more about how you can use subject headings and what the appropriate use of reply versus reply all is. And then more focusing in on that, is there some kind of prevailing wisdom on whether you keep the same subject heading for the entirety of an email chain versus changing it?
Great question. A lot of great questions. So let me start with reply versus reply all. Is that, yes.
Definitely please answer.
Yes.
Some of the questions that they're asking are also going to be part of the email etiquette summer learning session. So please answer.
Awesome.
And I want people to know that there'll be a follow-up.
So Stephanie's saying we're going to have a whole other session just on email etiquette, which is amazing. Reply versus reply all. I think that where I find my challenges is that sometimes when you reply versus replying all, it creates chaos because people don't know that you replied and took care of it. Sometimes, like today, somebody replied to me, and then I had to reply to include the other person back, and then that person didn't get there yet, and then they replied back to everybody else. So so I usually, if somebody replies just to me, and I think it's relevant that the other people know, I will reply back to everybody so that they know that it's complete. What I won't do is if there's an email with 10 people on it and it says, like, Scott, can you follow up? I don't write back to everyone and say, yes, I will follow up on that. I write back just to the one or two people that need to know I'm going to follow up because the other people don't care that I'm going to follow up or don't need to know that I'm going to follow up. In terms of subjects, it's an interesting question of, like, changing the subject is interesting. I use subjects, like, sometimes I'll put, like, draft, response needed. With that, some people have, like, systems where it's, like, 2 stars means I need you to reply to this right away. I think that the jury's out on those different things. I find that especially on my phone, I'll send the, like, subject only, like, can you call me or whatever. But subjects are, I will say that the more clear the subject is, the more likely it's going to stand out amongst the other 12 million emails in the person's inbox. There are other questions, Rachel?
Nope, no other questions online right now. I think you answered them all.
Awesome.
So, Scott, thank you. Thank you very much. I think that having this as a conversation is a really important organizational conversation. So even the question that Stephanie Singh asked about, how do you forward, you change the subject or not change the subject, are some of the conversations that I was hoping this series could bring to the surface, so we could make some organizational decisions about some of that. So I think the more questions that come in and the more we as a workforce talk about it, it will be helpful. Please know that next week we are continuing the session with a topic of Outlook and Outlook Web Access, and then we'll continue to talk about like Yammer you talked about and Link you talked about, because all these things are really integrated. Without thinking about them as integrated tools, I think we are sort of missing the boat on how to capitalize on them. So I'm so grateful for your time today, and when you put the slide up that said, help others, I'm thinking we're all going to call Scott first. And I think it's important to be able to reach out to your colleagues and help them, because Scott's helping me with my inbox. I help Scott organize his calendar.
That's right.
So it's kind of like this interplay of, helping each other with, what we are best at and what we kind of are most comfortable with. So
two things to add. One is I was thinking about this because I got emails from a couple of my camp colleagues that couldn't be on here, but what they do really well is when they are in their prime season, and you guys should all think about this as your prime season, they have a reply that every time you email it says, I'm not on camp, I'm not accessible to my email all the time. There's a lot of, we'll talk in the other webinars, I'm sure, about email etiquette, but if it's prime time for you and the work that you're doing and there's a respectful, appropriate out of office, that's another way to allow yourself the time to respond to the emails. The other thing is there's a game that we used to play with some of the camp staff and people here of sending each other an email with what the number was in your inbox, and it created a competition amongst each other to have less emails in your inbox, and you would be pissed off at the person that had the 12 emails in your inbox, and you start sending them emails to fill their inbox. But it's another great way to make it sort of a team thing to have a competition of who can have the least amount of emails in your inbox.
And I don't know that that's the goal, Scott, as much as it's organizing it well.
Correct.
Right? Because you could sort out and get to inbox 0, but it could be an extreme amount of time spent on that could be spent more productively elsewhere. So it's really more about, I think, organizing it in a way that makes sense to you so that you can quickly find an email, especially at HR where we save everything. From 3 years ago, 10 years ago, just, what was that email we sent out for this retreat? Being able to quickly find information when you need it and organizing it as taxonomy that works for you versus, just getting through it and making it 0. So are there any more questions?
Yeah, well, Stephanie Fink actually had a suggestion that I personally would find really useful as well. She said that she would love to have a list of some examples of Outlook rules that people use so that maybe we could browse for ideas. Is it possible to compile something like that?
Scott is shaking his head and saying it's really good. So I'll work with Scott and we'll figure that out. That's a great suggestion. And, Stephanie, thank you. And if there are other suggestions that people have as we continue these conversations through the summer, just, send them in. Email them to me. Elizabeth. So if that's it for now, Scott, everybody join me in thanking Scott for a wonderful conversation today. And I guess you've all seen that there's another call at 4 o'clock today with Mark and Paul to talk a little more about Israel. So until then, everyone have a good day. Thank you, Scott.